Today's topic is going to be something interesting. It's going to be data residency in Africa. Do we have one? Do we now have one? Well, we don't know. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Just Unsecure. It's your host, Babs, and co-host, OO. Let me just ask a quick question. What is data residency? OO, you want to break the ice on this one?
Yeah. The way you pointed out that data residency. Oh, right here. No, I'm here. It's just physical location of an organization, critical business data, or it could be a country. And sometimes people mix it with data sovereignty.
Spot on. I was about to say, most people always say, well, what's the difference? What's data residence? What's data sovereignty? Is it not the same thing? And I'm like, no, data residence has to do more with, I would say, where the business wants their data stored, and sovereignty is more that ensure that the data is stored in a particular country with the governing laws of that country controlling it as well. Yeah, that's my own interpretation.
It's spot on. That's just it, because data sovereignty has to do with legal and regulatory requirements. But it could be, if you store your data in the US, your data is governed by the US government. If they ask for it, they give it. If you store it in China, the same. If you store it in Nigeria, in Africa, the sovereignty of that nation applies to that data.
Yeah, I know. Russia, especially Russia, maybe like think in the oil sector, they are very adamant that any data from that sector must reside in the country. So if you are working in Russia, for example, and you go to Russia and you have data on your laptop for maybe that particular sector, and you about to fly out of the country with that data on your system, they see it as a form of espionage, or you're trying to take data away from their country. And that is a serious crime in Russia.
Absolutely. Most countries see it as a big deal. Even in most countries in the world, banking information, financial information for the banks they're not actually stored out of the country. And that is even controlled by the central bank or the reserve bank of the country. So that is a lot. But both can be used with each other. That means sovereignty and residency.
So now let's bring it back home, because we're two African young guys. We're young still. So from an African perspective, why should Africa as a whole be worried about data residency? I have my own one or two, but let you kick it off.
The question is not why they should. Why are they not? Because every other country, if we look at it, we look at Europe and all of that, everybody have got their kind of data privacy, data residency law, safe harbor, what have you. Why? Data now is just like oil, as we've been saying the last few years. So you can say, you've talked about Russia, having to say, you cannot take some of my oil exploration data out of the country. The same thing, data about all of us in Africa are actually well used everywhere else. Two, we don't have control over it. Even our resources, our research has been used by someone else. You cannot claim privacy or ownership on a data that you don't have control over.
Yeah, I think someone, I read it somewhere, everything has intellectual property now. You develop something, you say you have the intellectual property on it. It's almost like the same thing of data. So yeah, if Russia, if America, if Europe all have all this particular GDPR, safe harbor, different act, even South Africa, worst case, and different acts to ensure the data of their citizens is secure, then there's a reason, there's something they're saying, which every African country should try and emulate. That what they're indirectly saying is that data, like you said, is the new oil. So hence, if you're using my people's data outside of a particular jurisdiction, you must pay for it. You must add value. You must give value to that data. Absolutely. Pay for the data. And like they say in most of the new, I won't mention any company, but the data that they get from Africa is as good as you providing every security information available. And there's a saying, if it's free, then you are the product. Remember
Absolutely.
that.
So you have, at least you touch something that is very key to what we always talk about security, which is national security. So definitely, if you store my my passport information, my international passport, my ID card, my fingerprint out of the border of a country, even the GIS information out of the border of my country, definitely, you don't need to have any war with me. In fact,
the war is won already.
It is won already. So whoever has got the data has won the war. So definitely, why are we not doing that? And what should we do?
I think why we're not, initially I would have said the technical know-how, but in this day and age of information, I think that is no longer excuse for us to do that. There are lots of professionals just like myself and you within Africa and outside Africa in the diaspora. And I think some Africa, let's don't put all of Africa in one basket. Some African countries are taking the initiative. I gave example of South Africa, which is the Popeye Personal Protection of Personal Information Act. Okay, so that is something that other African countries to emulate. But it's not just about imitating it or emulating it. It's also ensuring that you are able to put in practice what needs to be derived from that act. You can have an act and not be able to enforce the act.
Absolutely. So there's a difference between an act. If you ask any country, probably they have something in work for a long time, but has never been enforced. Even the South Africa we're talking about, they've initially had it as what we call the E-Act for a while. And then it was only in 2021, July, that they actually enforced it.
Exactly.
That process needs to start, and needs to start really fast. But someone right here said, no, I'm not a government. I'm just a business. I'm responsible for my business. So how, please, Babs, how can someone that's listening to us, an organization that's listening to us, ensure data remains in their region, or in this context, let's say Africa?
That's a good one. In Africa, I would say having wherever you're going to store your data. So again, you have Africa, you have different regions, South, East, West. We are looking at it from an African perspective, one united continent, just like the Europeans, the North Americans, or South Asia, for example. If Africa should have their own independent cloud data centers, so private cloud data centers, where they know that data of their citizens or even business data as well can be stored and allowed to be stored, which means there's a track record that this data can be used in North, East, South, West Africa. If it goes outside of that jurisdiction, there should be a value attached to it. There should be a fine if it wasn't done by legal means or the proper channels. For me, I think having data centers all over Africa for the sole purpose of ensuring data is retained within the continent is a welcome development for me. That's my own take.
Absolutely. One of these is also when you are a business or you're a decision maker or you are a cybersecurity person trying to source cloud provider, irrespective, even if it's a famous cloud providers, the major ones like Amazon, Oracle, whoever it is, just make sure that in the fine print, apart from the fact that their data center is in country or in continent, it must also be in the fine print that your data is not replicated outside of the region. So this applies to that as well. Then the second one is when you are doing your data backup, do ensure your backup is also in the continent or region. But we understand that you want to do kind of DL in another region, but make sure it's in the same continent. Because I've seen people do backup in another continent, another region completely that is not within their control or jurisdiction, just like, in fact, backup is the easier way to access your data down, even your production environment. So that's another thing.
There's one I always think people tend to forget as well is looking at 3PPs or vendors. See, most of the data centers all depend on some form of 3PP or vendors to be able to communicate, to share data, to those extra activities. So a data center is just a physical
Exactly.
location. You still need fibers, you still need software, you still need applications to run, you still need different things. But again, is ensuring that whatever you're using, the vendors, the 3PPs are also aware that data for these customers in this data center cannot transverse past the continent or the region. Do you understand? So that is one thing most people tend to forget.
Yeah, in fact, that is the blind spot. If you've never watched our third-party security, please go ahead and look at our third-party security. We talked about making sure, because you can do everything, and you share some data even with a partner, or with a vendor. It might not even be data center, might be a vendor that you share your data with that are probably do not understand the level of data residency that you are looking at, and probably now store that somewhere else. So you have to also cross-check that to hold your third party responsible to be strict with your data residency requirement. So that is really key.
Something just popped into my mind just now is, I think I said it, but it wasn't too clear because, and you made a point about it, the fine print, but it's not just about the fine print. If Africa wants to have their data residency or sovereignty within the continent, every country must come together and sign up to an agreement because, like I said earlier, the Northern America, which includes America, Canada, all have that pact already. Same thing with the European Union to follow the GDPR, and same thing with the Asian, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan. But they all have a pact already for data sharing, which means that the data does not transverse that region. That is something that Africa should have as well. It can be the West signing up with the East signing up with the South signing up with the West, the North, and there's that pact and that agreement that our data will not transverse these regions. And then that's the way to go.
Sincerely, you nailed one of the things that has been troubling almost every business in Africa is that regulation. So we have to join forces and replicate what South Africans have done with Popia. And being able to do that across Africa. Africa has, if anybody's asking, why is it important in Africa? We are over 1 billion, about almost like the second or the third largest population in the world. So is our data valuable? Yes, very well. Do you know how the big social media are making money? They're making money on information. Google is making money on information. You can imagine all African data information are right there, not protected. So this is a key area that we need to look at. And if any one of us, even as an individual, needs to be concerned, this is a point we have to be concerned with. To say, yes, we're going to hold our constituency up to the task to say, guys, go ahead and make regulation, and we're going to support it to provide data residency and sovereignty right there in our continent.
I think even for our users, if they're able to tie how much a user's data costs, then that will open their eyes to people, especially from an African context, that your data is valuable. Some people say, "What? I don't know. What's my business with the data?" What they can't. But as long as you're clicking away, scrolling away, trust me, there's a reason Twitter wants to be in countries like Nigeria after they were banned. If they were not getting the data that they need, they don't need to care. They would move on. But they have 200, almost 150 million Nigerians and above going on Twitter on a daily basis. And, ensuring Twitter stats still goes up every day. Trust me, they don't want to lose that market. So remember, your data is valuable and your data should be secured personally, locally, regionally, and continent-wise. It needs to be secure regardless. So for me is keep in mind, if all the other countries are doing it, then Africa should be able to stand up and do it as well and ensure that we keep our data secure, valued, and also get rewarded for it. That's my own take.
Spot on. So if you're listening to us, please join us on other episodes. We have more episodes to talk about that. Ask your question to JU team at justunsecure.com. So today we've talked about the residency and sovereignty. We talked about why is it important, how you can do it, and what government regulations needs to do. We hope you return on some other time.
Bye, guys. Thank you.